and welcome to another weekly update. I hope you're doing well. Some interesting things to talk about this week from kind of all across the board. So getting straight into it, the first thing is Azure Communication Services, and we have another update from the Azure Communication Services team talking all about their updates for September. And there's a whole bunch of different things. In fact, I could do the whole 10-minute segment actually just on this one blog post, which I'm not going to do, but I will just kind of skim through some of these things because there's a whole bunch of improvements that have launched recently, and they're all pretty cool. A lot of them, it's really clear to see that the investment that was made in Microsoft Teams features is rolling through and being exposed by Azure Communication Services. And I think that's really good for developers because they get to take some of that same technology that the Microsoft Teams team use internally, and they can put it into their own applications. For example, Together Mode. So you can put Together Mode in your own application if you want to. Breakout rooms. You can put breakout rooms in your application if you want to. So recent, a while back, Microsoft Teams team put a bunch of innovation and kind of work into the virtual appointment experience by allowing multiple audio conferencing setups. And that same stuff has now come to Azure Communication Services as well. So if you don't want to use the Microsoft Teams virtual appointment stuff, you get basically the same feature set as you do with Azure Communication Services. I think that's what they're trying to aim at, is this kind of parity of feature. A bunch of other things as well. Joining a Teams meeting by ID, which is really nice. And a whole bunch of other things as well. Insights from your calls, from the real-time transcription. That's going to be very, very powerful, especially with some of the AI stuff. Very interesting being able to quickly and easily get access to that transcription. You could do all sorts of cool stuff with that. The same with the real-time audio streaming. Yeah, so this is quite a big update, actually. And I suspect this is probably, I don't know, because, we're not that close to Ignite. I was kind of thinking maybe this is the set of big features that they were waiting on that they want to talk about at Ignite. And that might well be true. Might be launch the features now, bed them in, get them out everywhere, fix the bugs, and then talk about them at Ignite. Or there might be more things coming for Ignite. So hard to tell. But this looks like definitely, people have been busy over the summer. And congrats to the team for this set of releases, I think, because this is a really strong set of improvements. Okay, from the Microsoft giveth to the Microsoft taketh away, the feed on Microsoft 365, the Office, it's easier to show you the screenshot, this thing, the Office, m365.cloud.microsoft or office.com, that kind of experience that you get. Previously, there's been a feed section which has given you kind of information that Microsoft thinks you care about. So that might be files that have recently been shared with you or uploaded by people you work closely with, or times you've been mentioned and stuff like that. That is going away. It's okay though, because it's being replaced really with this kind of recommended section. So there's not a big deal of change. This is going to be one of those things that either it won't impact you at all because you don't use it and you don't care, or it's like the thing you use all day, every day, and it's going to be a real pain. Hopefully it should just be a training update thing. So it's moving from being its own feed on the left-hand side to being more something that you see from the homepage and use that recommendation engine on the homepage. I guess depending on how much you used it and whether you went back in time to find stuff, you might find a bit of an impact there. But overall, I think the idea is that there's very little change. This is more, I'm bringing it to your attention for kind of the people who write documentation around this stuff for internal training guides and things like that, because that's now changed. All of those screenshots will need to be updated. So sorry about that. All right, next. This is kind of an interesting blog post. There's a blog post on the Microsoft 365 Copilot blog about the things that are new and improved with Microsoft Graph Connectors. Microsoft Graph Connectors have really come into their own, I'd say, in the past year or two, and they've really become in some ways much more important than they were, much more relevant than they were. They were always a kind of like, you'd need to be a pretty big enterprise to make use of them for them to be worthwhile, because what was the real value in bringing third-party data into the Microsoft ecosystem? What did it give you? Slightly better search. That was kind of it. So it kind of limited. But now that's how you bring large amounts of data into Microsoft 365 Copilot. So now it's not just search, this stuff feeds Copilot. So suddenly connectors are way more important than they used to be. And it really feels like the connectors team have had a big investment of functionality and experience and stuff. And we're starting to see that kind of play out now in some of the new stuff that they're getting and some of the stuff that's coming. So a bit of a intro, and some of these are announcements, some are just kind of stating facts. So like this first thing is like, well, that's what Copilot's, that's how Copilot works with Copilot agents. That's nothing to do with connectors, I don't think, really, other than just sort of pointing out that connectors are the part that, you use to bring in external data. There are some new connectors for Confluence and SharePoint Server. There's some other stuff in here as well. There's an SDK support for better indexing of that stuff in Copilot. So that's kind of interesting. You can really choose what goes into Copilot, I think, and what gets vectorized in the index in a bit more granularity than you've been able to before. So that's good. The Salesforce connector has been updated. Now, the Salesforce connector, as you might imagine, is super popular, especially with big enterprises. Big popular connector. So that's got a new feature in it by itself. So not just, this is kind of getting really specific now, a new feature in the Salesforce connector. So that's interesting. Other stuff, licensing updates. So you now get up to 50 million item indexes per tenant and no extra cost. That's cool. That's an increase. And I think that really speaks to Microsoft being super aware that it's really good for Microsoft, honestly, to get more information into Microsoft 365 right now and feed that Copilot engine, because it makes Copilot work better. So they're taking away some of those restrictions. And one of those restrictions is at some point you have to pay to index the stuff in Microsoft 365. So they've really raised that ceiling up a little bit. So that's good. And there's a bunch of other things as well. But again, I could spend probably the whole 10 minutes talking about all of these things. There's lots in that. So it's definitely worth going to check out. If you have connectors or you're on the fence about connectors, go have a look at them. Go check it out. The last thing I want to tell you about is not particularly devy. It's an interesting thing. I think it's massively... it should have been in there for a while. It's an overdue feature, but I can totally understand why. And that's this idea that you should be able to limit, or at least you can not prevent, but like suggest that frontline workers, well, in fact, you can limit frontline workers' access to Teams when they're off shift. We all know this problem of being constantly on all the time and wanting to turn off. And in some parts of the world, it's actually the law that you turn off, and companies shouldn't be able to reach you. And in some ways, I think that's what this blog post is about. So if you have frontline workers, if you have that stuff, then you have a working time feature. So admins can block or warn access if they try and use Microsoft Teams whilst they're off shift. So you have an option there. You can either warn about it or you can full on block it. So that's really interesting. And it's a kind of a step above just the quiet time stuff that everybody has in Teams. So if you didn't know this, Teams Mobile, go have a look at quiet time settings for notifications. It basically suppresses notifications between the hours you set, which you should align with your off hours. Super useful for making sure you don't get dragged into conversations in the evenings or at weekends if you don't want to, or at least kind of control how that happens. So you do get a chance to kind of have some of that work-life balance that's so important. I think it's a really good thing for frontline workers that there's a clear off switch. And like I say, in some parts of the world, it's mandatory. So I think it's good to see Microsoft bring it in here as well. But I think more companies could and should use it, honestly, even if it's just the warning phase, just to remind people that they don't have to be online all the time. All right, that's enough from me. Whatever it is you're doing this week, have a great one. And I will speak to you again next time.